I'm Nina. This is Kevin. And we have someone very special with us here today. We have baby Liliana. She was born yesterday. Our sweet little Lily. And we are in the day after bliss of having a baby. I feel like it's the best day because you're like finally feeling refreshed. We're able to like get out of bed. We both took showers. And now we're just enjoying her little sleepy snuggles. I want to go ahead and film our birth story just because it's so fresh in our minds right now. And her birth was just such a blessing that I don't want to forget any part of it. So I kind of want to just use this as like documenting for us so we can look back on it later and use it as a reminder of just how good God was during this birth. It's such a beautiful memory.
So we were supposed to be induced, well, my wife's supposed to be induced on Wednesday, the 26th, because her due date's the 27th. It's okay, baby. And so we went Wednesday night at 10 o'clock. Now, as we arrived, you know, I had the yoga ball, the yoga mat, I had the roller, but we had a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Arrived and now we were able to park and I was able to go inside. Then we walked in and the nurse wasn't so nice. She was kind of like, "What are you doing here?"
Yeah.
As if we didn't have,
here?
as if we didn't have an appointment for 10 p.m. And so we pulled out the sheet and was like, "Here you go. Here's the sheet." And she was kind of like, "No, this is wrong." And we're like, "Well, I don't know how it's wrong. It says 10:27, you know, or 10:26 at the time, right? At 10 p.m. And she's like, "No, we have no room for you. There's not enough nurses, there's not enough rooms." So everyone that's induced, it's like
Getting sent home.
Yeah, sent home like 3 days behind or so. So they were like telling us that they called us at 7 p.m. and we looked at our phones. There's no number that showed that they called from the hospital. So
yeah, they sent us home. So Kevin was kind of upset because he had like literally just lugged like a ton of stuff through the parking lot into the hospital, like to the OBER, and then like to be sent home when you're like mentally thinking you're gonna have a baby and you're gonna meet your baby was a little bit hard. But I actually was so at peace about it because I had been really struggling with the idea of being induced. That time I was just one day short of 40 weeks. So I was one day before my due date and I was really struggling, like, should I get induced or should I wait and hope I go into labor naturally? But then like the risk of the baby getting bigger and maybe needing to be induced anyways. I was induced with my first baby, but I really wanted to go into labor naturally. So I had been praying about it and like my closest friends had been praying about it as well. So the fact that they sent us home for me was like a huge answer from God that like, okay, we weren't supposed to get the induction. We just need to wait and be patient for baby girl to come on her own. So I was actually pretty okay with it. And obviously I wanted to meet her. So it was a little bit, you know, like mixed bittersweet. Oh, she burpy. We ended up going home that night. And then on October 28th, which was a Friday night, well, on Friday, actually, I like started to feel some pelvic pressure throughout the day and it wasn't at all consistent. It was like maybe like here and there throughout the day. I wasn't really like keeping track of it. I actually thought that maybe I was like super constipated or something because we had had Chinese food the night before. So I was like, okay, maybe my stomach's like doing weird things. By like 7 or 8 p.m., I started to feel them more consistently. And throughout the day, I had kind of thought maybe it could be starting labor, but I didn't want to get my hopes up. So that night we like went for a walk. I was doing some curb walking. I was doing squats, like just little things to try and like get the baby going. Around 7 or 8, I started to feel like the pressure was feeling more consistent. I was a little bit confused still because I didn't think like that's exactly what the contractions were gonna feel like, and it didn't really feel like my contractions the first time. I started timing them and I started noticing that they were happening like consistently, like every like 10-ish minutes. I ended up taking a nap around 11:50 p.m. so I couldn't really sleep because I was kind of excited, like, is the baby gonna come? Are these contractions? Let me do some squats. And Kevin went to sleep like at 9 p.m. I was like, you should go to sleep just in case the baby is coming, that way like you can get some rest. And I did call my mom and my mom came over. We said like, why don't you just spend the night just in case I do go into labor, then she would already be there to take care of Jaden. So I took a nap around 11:50. I slept for like 2 hours, and then I woke up around 2 a.m. At that point, I got out of bed and I was still a little confused because they were coming and they were a little bit stronger, like where it was uncomfortable to be laying down, but they weren't really like painful as I remember them being when I had gotten induced. So I started tracking them, the pressure that I was feeling, and they were happening every like 6 to 7 minutes at that point. And my doctor had told me to come into the hospital when I was feeling contractions every 7 minutes because of how fast Jaden came and how fast I delivered my first baby. She said, you know, don't take any chances once your contractions are 7 minutes apart, which is farther apart than they usually tell people to go into the hospital. But at that point, even though they were 6 to 7 minutes apart, they weren't super intense to me. So I was like, should we go into the hospital? Like, I don't want to go if they're just gonna send me home or be like, this is like false labor. Like, I didn't want to go back and then have to come back home. So we waited a little bit longer. I was like walking around, trying to just stay active. And like when the pressure would come, I would just be moving, and that felt really good. I was practicing breathing through them, even though I was able to still like move and talk and stuff as they were coming. Around 3 in the morning was when I woke up Kevin, because at that point I was still timing them and they were coming every like 5 minutes. So I was like, all right, it's time to kind of like act on it.
I had to rush, get everything done.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to take baby girl. Anyways, Kevin like rushed to get ready because I was like, I think if these are contractions, they're already 5 minutes apart, and it was like quickly getting like 4.5 minutes, 4 minutes 45 seconds. And at that point I was starting to ask Kevin to do the counter pressure, where you were like he was putting his hands like on the side of my hips and like pressing when I was feeling the waves come, and then I was like breathing through it. But I was still able to do it without the counter pressure, like when he was in the shower and like loading the car and stuff. It wasn't like super intense yet. We got to the hospital around 4 a.m. When we walked in, I was still nervous because I was like, I don't know if they're gonna send us back home, and I was just breathing through the contractions. I was trying to like maintain my mental safe space. So like I told Kevin, if anyone talks to me while I'm having a contraction, I'm not gonna answer them. You're gonna be my voice, because I just wanted to like start getting into that zone of where I'm like not breakable during my contractions, since that was something I really struggled with the first time around. Like every contraction I felt like I had lost control, and this time I was like, I need to be just mentally breathing and in control of every contraction, like from the beginning. We were waiting in the OB/ER. They were like, okay, well, we have to check you and see how often your contractions are coming before we can tell you whether you can stay or whether we're gonna send you back home. So around 5, the on-call OB finally came in. At that point, how far along did you think I was? Like how far dilated?
I don't know. I had no idea. You were not so much in pain.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're hoping for 3, right?
Yeah, we were saying like, I hope we're like at least at 3 centimeters. The doctor checked me and he was like, you're at 6 centimeters, like you're not going home. And the nurse was super nice. She was like, oh my gosh, you're doing such a great job. Like I think they were both shocked. I think we were all shocked.
Yeah, how far along she was.
Yeah, that we were already like 6 centimeters, and that at that point I felt really encouraged, because I was like, oh, like I can do this. I can really just keep breathing through them. So we did tell them that we had a fast first birth, so we asked them to get us a room as soon as possible. They were really great. Like everyone that we encountered was just so amazing. They gave us a room right away. Yeah. As soon as we got in the room, I think you kind of set up the room a little bit. So he put the yoga mat out that we had brought. He brought out the birth ball that the hospital had, turned off the lights for me, since that was some things that we had talked about ahead of time. Immediately, like I was on the yoga mat, and with every contraction, Kevin was doing the counter pressure, where he was squeezing my hips or putting his hands on my back. Were your hands hurting? Were you tired?
No, I wasn't tired. I think just because it was the position that we're in, like my lower back and my legs were kind of bothering me, but
yeah,
it was good.
The nurse came in, and honestly, one of the things that I had been specifically praying for was a great nurse during my delivery, and literally every single nurse we've had has been amazing, but that first nurse, she immediately picked up on like the vibe, and she saw how calm like we were, and she saw that we were both like doing our thing, getting through every contraction, and she was like, whatever you're doing is working, so I'm just gonna let you guys keep doing your thing. Yeah. And she didn't put me on the monitor. She didn't connect my IV. She's like, I'm gonna just let you guys be able to roam around free, which was super nice of her, because I know sometimes they're really stickler about like being hooked up and then it's harder to move. She saw that like I wanted to be moving around and walking around and squatting and all of that, so she just like let us do our thing. She asked me about what my birth plan was, and I told her it was like just to continue what we were doing. And she was like, okay, we're just gonna go with it. We're gonna let your body decide how this is gonna go. We also had the worship music playing at that point, and I felt like every song was so good. I had it in my ears at one point, and it was encouraging me, and then Kevin put it on the speaker, so it was just like the vibe of the room. Around 6 a.m. another nurse came in, so we had been there for a little bit, and she came in, and I asked her at what point would they know to call the doctor, just because they weren't monitoring me. And she was like, let me check you just so we can decide whether to call the doctor, which was another God thing, because I didn't think my doctor was on call this weekend, but she was on call, and I was able to have my doctor, which was a really big deal to me, of like feeling safe and knowing that she knew what I wanted of a natural birth and what I had been through before with my first birth. So that was huge that God allowed her to be on call that weekend. The nurse came back in, and she went to check me, and she said that I was 8.5 to 9 centimeters at that point. It was right when the shift change was happening, so the day nurse was also with her. Again, she was so sweet. She came right in, jumped right on board with what we were doing, and the night nurse was getting ready to leave, and she was like, I'm sad that I'm not going to be able to see this birth. I was like, you can stay if you want. And they said they were going to go ahead and call for my doctor, since I was like right at about 9 centimeters. I think I was like shocked that we were at that point, because it was quick and it still like was manageable just with like the breathing through it. At that point we had put on hypnobirthing soundtracks, and so it was just like keeping everything calm, and like just with the dim lights, it just felt like a very safe, calm environment, which can be hard. I feel like you have to really work for in the hospital, but yeah, God just put the right people to like keep that safe. Yeah, she did hook me up so she could see the contractions and check the baby's heart rate and all of that, since she said we were close to being able to push. Hooked me up, and then at that point I was on the bed, and I was trying to get comfortable on the bed. Kevin was doing the pressure on my shoulders, since he didn't really have access to my hips. And that's probably the first part that I felt like, okay, this is getting hard. And I think it was just like trying to find a comfortable position, and like a lot of pressure was happening down there. I tried side lying. I was also getting tired, I think, at that point. So I was laying on my side, and I was doing the contractions like that. And then finally my doctor got there around 7 a.m. and she did a super quick check. Like I didn't even basically feel her check, and she was like, oh, you are 10 centimeters, you're ready to go. So I thought I was ready to push, because I was feeling some pressure when she told me that I was 10 centimeters, but the next contraction came. I was lying on my side. I knew I didn't want to give birth on my back, and I didn't feel at all like that was a position I wanted to be in. And when the next contraction came, my doctor told me, okay, go ahead and push. And I just like couldn't, like I was like, I don't feel like I need to push. And I remember distinctly with my first birth what that pressure and what that pushing feeling felt like, and I didn't feel that. So I was like, I told her I don't know how to push right now. I don't think that my body wants me to push. Then she did suggest changing positions. When the next contraction came, I just naturally like went on all fours. It felt a lot better. At that point, I think I let out like a really loud like moan or like groaning sound. And then the doctor was like, oh, okay, now you might be ready to push. And that position change helped me so much. I guess like whatever position the baby was in when I was lying on my side just wasn't it for me. And then when I went on all fours, I started feeling that pressure of it being time to push.
Yeah.
And that was definitely one of the hardest points during the whole birth, was just pushing the baby out. It felt like a really long time, but how long do you think it actually was?
8 to 10 minutes.
Okay, yeah, it felt like an hour to me. It was like maybe like 4 total contractions, but like a lot of different pushing in between the contractions. That second contraction I had where I was pushing, I remember just like thinking, I don't know if I can do this. And I think that was the only point I had felt that in the whole birth experience up until that point. And I started losing control of my breath, and my doctor was just so great. Like, she snapped me out of it. She's like, oh, it's okay. She was like, you have been in control this whole time. You're not gonna lose control right now. Breathe. And like before she even told me like push or anything like that, she's like, first breathe, which was like the key during the whole birth, was like my breathing. I know they always say breathing makes a difference, and I'm like, what does that even mean? Like last time I tried breathing and I couldn't do it. I couldn't get control of my breath. But this time, like having control of my breath with every contraction made the world of a difference. And that mental feeling affects your physical feeling. It's like a crazy thing. So she had me regain control of my breath, and I was able to do that. And then the next 2 contractions, I was able to really focus on the pushing. And the last one, I pushed really hard and the whole baby just came out in one big like, yeah. The baby girl came out, and then we got to meet Liliana, which was such a precious moment. And it just, the whole experience felt so surreal. And even like after, our nurse, when she was walking us to our recovery room from the L&D floor to the recovery floor, she told us like, I've never seen a natural birth like that, like how calm we were the whole time, and just the like peace that was in the room. And that's the main thing like I don't want to forget from this birth, is I felt like God's peace and his presence was really there with us. And I felt like every person who had prayed for us, I just felt those prayers, and I felt like God was so faithful. And one thing I had specifically been praying for was that this birth, oh, look at her toes, was that this birth would be like redeeming compared to my first birth. I think my first birth was I don't want to say traumatic, because it was healthy baby, I was healthy, but it was just a lot for me mentally afterwards to recover from. And I wanted it to be something that God just like completely restored and redeemed, and I felt like he did. Like even afterwards I could like cry just like thinking about it, because I felt like God was just I felt like God was just in every detail. And I feel like sometimes we forget that he wants to be in every detail of our lives. We just have to like invite him in, and I think he like wants us to invite him in. And like something so precious as a birth, it's like he took care of every single detail. He was just so good and like gracious to us in that. I wanted to really remember every detail of this as something we can look back on when we maybe are in harder seasons, of like looking back on times that God was just so faithful and like gave us such beautiful gifts.
So a couple things in this process, I totally encourage any expecting moms or future moms to start planning. Start having a plan that's gonna fit you. It's easy just to like go with it, but like you should go with it with the plan, right? My wife started doing some research, she got me involved. I think the first birth was kind of trial and error, and we saw the things that we didn't like and saw how can we do better next time. And God put all the right people in place, whether it be the nurses, the doctor, the situation, the scenarios, like everything just came out perfectly. Even in the moment where my wife struggled for like, I think like a minute or two, like the doctor had the words to speak to her to try to calm her down. I think those are all wonderful things that happen. And like Christina said, like the biggest thing is just inviting God to allow you to experience his full grace, his full pleasure. And then the second thing I realized in this experience is that girls are awesome. Whether it be like you, like my wife, a girl, like her strength throughout this whole process, even the recovery, she's been able to stay up, have the adrenaline to feed her baby, to hold her baby. I haven't done squat. I'm exhausted because I think God made her to be so strong for these moments. And I'm just amazed by women in general. And experiencing my daughter for the first time, she's been an angel. Like, oh my gosh, I hold her and I just want to keep her in my arms. Everyone knows that I did not want a baby girl. But now that I have one, it's like been one of the greatest blessings. I just look forward to growing with her and watching her develop and just be a beautiful being in this world.
Yeah, and I think, like, I don't want to sound insensitive because I know a lot of people do have really traumatic births, and that's not to say like, oh, they didn't pray enough or didn't prepare enough or anything like that. I know that this was just a blessing and we didn't deserve it. It was full of God's grace.
Like Christina says, it's like a redemption for our first birth, and I don't know why or who or what, but God did bless us with this experience, and we wanted to share this joy with you.
So yeah, and now it is time to feed baby girl. So we are going to say goodbye for now, right, baby girl? Oh yeah, she said, please feed me. Oh. All right, well, that's our story.
Until
We'll
next
see
time.
you in our next video. Bye.